Bravery is the number one reason that I got fucked because of in my entire life. I have done an analysis of 21 years of my life and I realized that all the mistakes and disasters that happened to me was because I wasn't brave. So today I'll be talking about how I became brave, how bravery actually made me successful in so many scenarios that I wouldn't be successful in otherwise, and also how the lack of bravery has really fucked me up really bad in so many scenarios. So let's begin. So the story has actually began with the book Choose Your Enemies Wisely by Patrick B. David, and especially with this chapter or this segment where he talks about analyzing your life, or really what he does talk about is analyzing your business. And he talks about to make a business plan for your business, obviously, first you need to understand your past. So meaning for the past year, you need to realize every mistake you've done, what could you have learned from it, the people who are influencing you, etc. So you have to respond to a bunch of questions, and basically the entire component or the importance of it is to understand the past, because this new repeats itself. And in our lives or whatever business, whatever it is, always there's patterns that repeats themselves constantly. And a lot of patterns, you just need to recognize them so you can break them up. And that's really the value of this. Now, if this sounds a little bit, fadey or foggy a little bit, just bear with me, it's all gonna make sense. So when I read this, I said, well, it's a good idea, it's an amazing idea actually, to understand the past so you can predict the future. And I said, look, Patrick B. David here talks about how we can do it in business. What I'm gonna do with it, I'm gonna take it to the next level, do it in my life. Meaning, I was 21 at the time, which is like last year. I said, I'm gonna do, for 21 years of my life, every single year, I'm gonna go back and answer a bunch of questions. For me, it was about 15. I'm pretty sure I used also ChatGPT as a leverage to ask the questions. And the questions are like, what's the biggest event that happened? What's the biggest mistake you have done? If you could go back and change one thing, what would it be? If you can learn something from that year now, what would it be? Who was the most influential person in your life in that year? Stuff like that. And who's the person you looked up to? I don't know. But it was a lot of questions like that that really give you some sort of in-depth information about that year. So I did that for 21 years of my life. It took me about 4 hours to go through all the years. And what I really found out is that every mistake and disaster that happened to me in my life, it was because I wasn't brave. The lack of bravery have made that mistake. And I'm talking the biggest insecurities of my childhood, the biggest disaster, the strongest emotional moments that I do remember in my life. It was just because I wasn't brave. And that's it. And I said, that's crazy, right? And especially when you go in depth and you're like, that's what I do. And it was a direct correlation with, I wasn't brave. And what I realized is that there is a segment, or there's one of the last few questions that you have to ask to answer for each year. It was, what would be the lesson that you would learn now from that year? And for the most of the years of my life, it was just one sentence, and I wrote it all in big capitals, right? And it was, fuck everybody, I'll do whatever the fuck I want, and I'll put myself first. And basically, right, I'm gonna say it even again because this is big. Fuck everybody in the world. I don't give a fuck about anyone in the world. I'll put myself first and only myself first. Fuck everybody. I don't give a fuck about anyone in the world. I put myself first and only myself first. Imagine, that was the fucking lesson that has repeated so many times throughout my life. It's insane. It's crazy. And I wrote it with this exact wording, okay? Now, I'll explain more. Before I give you the stories of where I was brave and I succeeded, I'll give you even more references so you can understand even more in depth how important this topic is. Bravery is one of the most important topics in the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. It talks about how genuinely success cannot happen without bravery. And he also talks about an entire segment about fear and hesitation and doubt and the lack of faith, whatever. And he talks about those three doesn't happen when it's whether you have the bravery and desire and faith, or you have the other three, right? Bravery is also mentioned by Andrew Tate. He talks about being brave in a lot of courses, especially his early on courses. I mean, even now he talks about it. Alex Hermosi also talks about it. I mean, who? Fuck. David Goggins also talks about it in his book, Can't Hurt Me. I mean, I can go on and on. Even Tim Ferriss talks about it in the 4-Hour Workweek when he wanted to break the rules when he won the championship of the Chinese boxing or whatever that was. So bravery is important. Let's just say that. And also Elon Musk, I mean, god damn, Elon Musk's biography is all about bravery. Generally, it's all about bravery, right? So if this topic has so much importance and value, let's understand it more. Now, the first story that I want to share with you, which is my story on how bravery has actually made me successful, is my business. So I started a business about 2 or 3 years ago, and the business was basic idea. I was in college and I didn't like presentations. PowerPoint presentation took too much time, and I used to sleep at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. making the PowerPoint presentation, and I didn't like it. It was too much stress. I said, you know what? It's a good business idea. People hate it, so I'm gonna do it for them for $1. What about that? Good idea. Good business. Let's do that. So I did that for a while. Obviously the presentations, so the marketing was like presentation under an hour, and sometimes it used to take me 4 hours to make a presentation. But anyway, after that, about a month or so, people came to me and they were like, hey, I have a thesis. Do you want to make a PowerPoint presentation for my thesis? I said, yeah, of course. I do that all the time. Never done that in my entire life. That's bravery. Bravery is just being, having the balls to say yes to opportunity. Did that. A few days later, a thesis came up. And now it's not PowerPoint presentation, but to make the entire thesis. Do you know how to make a thesis? I am in my bachelor's degree. It's not even bachelor, it's 2 years after high school. Of course I know how to do that. Of course, yeah, welcome. You know how much you're gonna pay me? Oh, I'm gonna pay you this, of course, sure. Learn how to do the thesis. Never done that thesis in my entire life. And I remember I was arguing, whatever, we were negotiating, and I said, look, I actually do this and I dealt with a lot of people, and I've done this so many times, and it's so much stress, I shouldn't have all this stress, whatever. It was like some sort of negotiating tactic that I was doing. But that was the thing that actually genuinely happened. After that, people came to me with a bachelor's degree thesis. Hey, I have my bachelor's degree and I can't really make it. I'm working or I'm living abroad or whatever reasons, and I really want you to make it for me. Sure, I do that all the time. Of course, bravery again. Then master's degrees came out. Hey, I have a master's degree thesis. I really want you to make it for me. Do you know how to make it? Yeah, of course I can make it. That's easy for me. Never done that in my fucking life. But bravery, without bravery, I wouldn't even be able to say yes to those opportunities. Another story with bravery is with my thesis, my own thesis. So this year I stopped working on thesis of others, just thesis of myself. Sounds good. I have the presentation of my graduation thesis, whatever, on Monday. So in 4 days, 3-4 days. From now, I have my graduation thesis presentation, whatever. And the idea that came out with my thesis idea, which was a professor last year, 2 professors came to me and they said, look, I was actually presenting, and that's the thing, bravery again. I was going to the professors and I was genuinely pitching professors with my business, which obviously I didn't tell them that I make thesis for students, but to them I said I actually make presentations for teachers, which I have done it a couple of times. So now for them, I was the guy who make presentations for teachers. I was a genius. So professors came to me, one professor in particular came to me, and another one also came to me after, hey, you're actually very good with, this digital, whatever. In French, we call it informatique, which is information or digitalization or computer science, something like that, as a translation. But really, it's like you're good with computers, okay? And yes, I said, yeah, of course, obviously I am good. And it said, well, actually, do you know how to make an application using AI, whatever? I said, yeah, of course I can do. I've never done an application in my entire life. I know nothing about application design. I said, yeah, of course I can do it. So that's bravery, being brave, right? And guess what was my thesis this year? A fucking application. And who was the idea was? The professor. Came to me back again. Do you know how to make application? Of course I can. Never done an application my entire life. Brave, brash. And now I know I'm getting a 20 out of 20 grade in my thesis. I know I have the best thesis in my college or in the entire nation, right? That's what it is. Why? Bravery. Bravery. Being confident or having confidence in my skills and my ability to actually figure it out. And guess what? I did figure it out. I did make the application. So it didn't really lie. I said I'm gonna make the application and I made the application. In fact, I made a better application than what the professor had actually seen. Because he saw a first version of it and he even made it better. Just because, right? Because obviously I wanted to, and I don't want someone to look at it and be like, oh, you should have done this. No, it's actually very good application. Why? How I was able to have such a thing, have such an opportunity, where most students are making generic topics that have been around for tens and tens of years. People are still making thesis presentation topics about nurses' stress. Brother, that was a topic in the 80s, brother. You know how big that is. You know how bad that is. Very bad. You don't want to make a presentation topic that is, what, 40 years old, 45 years old? That's really bad. You want something, you want to be the first. Like ours, it's the first topic ever. I have made it. I have done the application. Reason behind it, bravery. If I wasn't brave, oh no, I actually don't know and I've never done an application in my life and I could try and actually see if ChatGPT will actually help me and I would see AI and what AI can do now. They're not gonna give me the topic. They're not gonna even believe in me, right? I'm not gonna have the privilege of choosing my own topic and teachers and professors and juries, whatever. Wouldn't have any of these privileges. Why? Because I wasn't brave. Because I was brave, I had the privilege of choosing whatever I want, right? Obviously, bravery, again. I'll give also another reason with bravery, and here it's almost bravery mixed with opportunity taking. Because genuinely, a lot of opportunities that comes to you through your life is really also about bravery. And before I give my story, I'll also give this story from the book, The Richest Man in Babylon, one of the best investing books or financial books, whatever. And he talks about this arc and this chapter, this big chapter calls about the goddess of luck or the goddess of good luck. And he talks about this story of this sheep herder who was actually going to this land called Babylon and he wanted to buy sheep. Now, he came with his camels and slaves, whatever. They settled down for the night. It was the night. And someone came to him and he said, sir, my wife is dying. She has a disease, or not dying, she has a disease, or she's ill, whatever. And she needs me to go back to her. And I have 1,000 sheep in here. I want to sell to you with a cheap price, like half the price or a third of the price or something. And if you buy it from me now, obviously, and I will give you the sheep, I will leave with you the smarter of my slave, the smartest of my slaves, and I want to go to my wife. And he said, well, it's a good idea, whatever. Let me count the sheep first. The person who wants to sell the sheep, he said, well, I can't actually wait for you. It's 1,000 sheep. Because if you count 1,000 sheep, you need to stay to the morning. And he said, well, actually by the sound, it sounded like 1,000 sheep. But it was impossible, it was hard. And I told my slave to count, but they were lost because it's night, it's pitch black. The one who wants to sell them, he said, look, I'm gonna leave with you the smartest of my slaves. They're very reliable. They're gonna help you count the sheep. Just give me the money, third of the price. I want to go back to my wife. He said, no, I'm gonna wait till the morning. The morning, the gate has opened, and before he even know it, three guys or three people came from the city. They want to buy sheep. And they bought that sheep for 3 times the prices, or 10 times the price, or something crazy. And in this specific particular topic in the book, The Richest Man in Babylon, he talks about how opportunity waits for nobody. And also here, you wouldn't or you couldn't actually neglect the fact that it's not only, obviously opportunity is always linked to time, but also you need bravery. Bravery to act fast, right? Bravery, to not wait until you're sure to actually act and make the purchase, whatever. So going back to my story, about a month ago, I was actually, same thing. I was brave. I was going to some centers, whatever, doing some learning and stuff like that. And I went by my athleticism track in my city. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna be brave. It's a little bit brave. It's not really that brave. I just went out and I said, look, you know what? I'm gonna ask. What's the worst that can happen? So I went there, asked, hey, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I actually gave him my stat, and he said, look, you can actually run with us next week in the marathon. Can you? Of course I fucking can. Bravery, again, I've never done a marathon in my life. Never seen a professional track in my race in my life, bruv. And before I knew it, a week later, I've done the half marathon. I succeeded. I have the medal right here. How? Why? Bravery. And throughout the story, obviously, there were different acts of bravery, like traveling and, traveling to a new city with limited time and not knowing everybody and doing it, whatever, just being brave, right? And I genuinely can recite so many tales, so many stories of my own personal life. And it just shows how bravery has changed my life so drastically that I wouldn't have succeeded in those particular scenarios, no matter how they are, no matter how big or small they are, without bravery. It's the one component that almost unlocks any key lock, right? It's almost a key that unlocks any key lock. So it happens again and again. It happens again and again. It happens again and again. And a lot of the times, just bravery happens in so many different ways, man. And I'll give you another example. This example will drive it home because it's going to give not only my story, but the story of others, which is my colleagues. So my colleagues in university, obviously we have internship, and a lot of the times we come to these situations where bravery actually holds a very important place. So I remember that with this specific or particular strategy that I had to go through internship and get the best grade, it actually required some bravery, to do the right things at the right time, talk with the right people in the right way about the right topics. Very simple, right? We just gotta do certain things a certain way, certain times, talk with certain people about certain topics, certain ways, certain times. Very simple, very straightforward. But people, what they seem to happen or do is that they can agree with it on paper, but when it comes to doing, they don't actually do it. They don't have the balls to do it. They don't have the bravery to do it. So with this particular internship I've actually done a little bit of research. I know how to actually deal with it and how to actually get the best results, get the best grades. I know how to actually pop up and, always be as punctual as it gets and, just be there and be brass like I am me, I'm the best, whatever. And the times where I'm as passive as it gets, right? And that's obviously also sort of underlies or highlights the importance of actually knowing or having information or doing your research, whatever. But more of that, it was just being passive. I was almost a ghost, genuinely. I was a ghost in certain periods, and I was the guy in certain periods. I was the guy who holds the attention in certain periods, and it was the guy who is passive. Nobody cares about him in certain periods. More than that, with different people. I was the passive, the guy who nobody knows about him with certain people, and I was the guy with certain people. What makes a difference? These people give me the grades. These scenarios assures me that I'm gonna be the first. I don't really care. I get a 20 out of 20 grade. These scenarios, I don't get nothing. If anything, showing up could fuck me up really bad. With these certain people, same thing. I don't get nothing. If anything, I could get fucked really bad. And people, as simple as this sounds, people in practice are afraid to be passive in certain situations, to almost say fuck you to certain people, and to actually go all in with certain people. That is what bravery is. And this how I actually became the fourth in the class last semester. I don't even fucking know how I became the fourth in the class. Right? I don't study as much as the others. I'm gonna be honest. I'm not here 2 weeks before the exam or 2 months before the exam fucking studying every day for 10 hours. I don't fucking do. And I became the fourth. Can you imagine that the girl who gave me her notes to prepare from, not gave me, but gave the entire class, I prepared with those notes. I classed fourth, she classed ninth or sixth. So it classed even better than the girl who gave everyone's her, sheet sheets, or not. We don't have sheet sheets, but we have notes. You prepare notes, you revise and memorize. Nothing in the exam, okay? No sheets, no sheet papers. But that's the thing. Why? Because bravery. We have a lot of other modules that requires bravery, that requires good relationships. Even relationships with people requires bravery. I mean, same thing. One of the professors in that semester, I first met her last year. And the first interactions, about first session, I went back to her brave, presented to her with my service that I talked to you about earlier. Hey, I actually do presentations for professors, and I actually failed last year, so I had a lot of the time, so I actually worked on myself, I actually developed the skill of making the presentation. Now I'm making a service to actually help myself and actually make presentations with professors. And I look at you and I think I can actually make your presentations better. Simple. As simple as it gets. She was over the moon about it, bruv. She said, holy shit, where have you been? And how I have never saw you before. And how you are so shy and you have all this competence. Bruv, all what I did was talk and have the bravery to do it. That's all it is. That's bravery what it is. Now, when it comes, because I promised, I said I'm going to give you the stories where bravery has actually made me successful, and also the stories where the lack of bravery has actually made me fail. Let's get it happen. I'm going to give you a simple story that I know a lot of people will find almost iconic or ironic or not really important, but for me, doing that analysis is one of the simplest stories that I can give from my personal life that was so emotional and tight to me, and it just shows that how the lack of bravery can fuck you up at a very young age. For me, I was at the age of 8 or 7, second grade, and I had this elephant. I'm pretty sure it's elephant from whether Disney World or Simba or The Lion King, one of those movies. It was a red, or Timon and Pumbaa, whatever, one of those, okay? It was a red elephant. You can probably search it up, you can find it, or probably already know it. But anyway, I loved that elephant, bro. I like that. I'm pretty sure it was a gift, whatever. I just had it. I had it in the house, I liked it. One day, I got it with me to the school, second grade, as I said. And I don't remember if I had it in my backpack or I had it in my hand. But the first professor, she came to me and she's like, do you have a bear in your bag? Do you got a bear with you to school? I mean, brother, it's second grade. What about fucking chill, yeah? But anyway, I was scared. I genuinely remember this, bro. It was, what? How many years that was? How many years? That was 14 years ago? Bruv. Genuinely, wallahi, which means I swear to God, I remember that feeling. My heart was racing. I felt my saliva, couldn't swallow it. My heart was racing. And I said, oh yeah. And she said, and now looking back, she was manipulative. She said, oh, actually you want to give it to the class and put it in the class closet as everybody to have fun with it or whatever? Because she was building a stupid tree in the back with all the games and toys. And I said, yeah, because I was afraid. I wasn't brave to say no. I just love it. And I want to take it with me everywhere. And guess what fucking happened? She took it. She put it in that fucking closet. And I remember I looked at it every fucking single day. That hurts. And I know this story you're saying, look, Yasin, you were young, bruv. Chill out. You were 8 years old. No. It just shows how bravery or the lack of bravery is so rooted in you that even at a very young age, it can fuck you up and screw you up really bad. I mean, you're like, brother, it was a toy. For me, when I was 8 years old, my toy was everything, bruv. It wasn't, it's like your car or your camera or something that's you hold very tight to your heart. That's the signification of it, the symbolization of it. And for me, when I was looking back, doing the analysis for the 21 years of my life, that story has got me. I said, no way, that fucked me up so bad, and I still remember it with details up till this day, just because directly because of the lack of bravery. Just because it wasn't brave. And with this being said, I'm gonna drive this home, or I'm gonna let this be driven home. I couldn't actually stress this enough. Without having bravery, you will never succeed. You never succeed, bro. Every time I succeeded in my life, every fucking single time without a fail, with no exceptions, was because I was brave. Or braver than anybody else. And even this quote from Andrew Tate's Hustler University, there's an account called The Young Kings. I remember this. He posted that about 1 or 2 years ago. And the quote says, I'm pretty sure even Andrew Tate was actually saying it or reposting it a lot. And he said, you only get rich with 2 ways. Whether you do things that people are unable to do, or do you do things that people are afraid to do. So whether you're afraid to, or whether you have the skills to do things people can't do, or you have the bravery to do things people can't do. And a lot of the times, bravery is easier than having the skills, bruv. Just have the bravery to do things that people are scared to do. That's really all what business is. And that's how you make money. At least that's how Andrew Tate thinks about it. He's a billionaire, deca-billionaire, hundreds of millions of dollars he has. So I'm gonna drive this home. Thank you for watching. I really hope, believe, look, genuinely watch this video again and again. If you have to watch it twice, thrice, 15 times, it doesn't matter. But these ideas has to be with you like a second brain, like a second nature to you. This has to be your nature. Bravery has to be the first option in your mind. Always you're asking yourself, what's the bravest choice? Because a lot of the times, which is true psychologically, if it wasn't there, if it wasn't right, you wouldn't even think about it. Your mind doesn't think of stupid shit. If a brave thing comes to, if a brave choice comes to your mind, always take it. Because as long as your mind gives you that option, that means it's always right. It's always right. I always take the fucking brave choice and it's always fucking right. Subscribe.